Okay, let's unpack this. Um, think about the car sitting in your driveway, getting the oil changed or, rotating the tires, checking the brake pads. None of this is a thrilling weekend activity.
No, definitely not. It's pretty tedious.
Right. It is the literal definition of mundane, invisible work. But, I mean, it is that quiet, boring habit that keeps the engine from completely failing while you're halfway across the country on a road trip.
Exactly.
And today we are taking a deep dive into a source text from the Beagle Health Academy about adult preventive care. And our mission today is to figure out how these tiny, kind of unglamorous habits translate into years of healthy adventures.
Yeah, not just for a specific breed of dog.
Yeah, exactly. We're examining the mechanisms of proactive health itself for, well, for any system, really.
What's fascinating here is how the source material completely redefines a concept we usually just take for granted, which is what it actually means to be a healthy beagle.
Right, because we usually think of health as just a passive state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The assumption is that a healthy animal is simply one that happens to be avoiding sickness right now. But this text argues that health is constructed.
Constructed, I like that.
Yeah, it's an active, deliberate partnership. The owner is building a biological and environmental framework to basically intercept problems long before the symptoms ever surface.
And to construct that framework, I mean, the text makes it really clear we have to dismantle the most dangerous misconception in pet care, which is the trap of the dog that just looks healthy.
Yes, that is a huge trap.
We are looking specifically at adult beagles today, so roughly in that 1 to 7 or 8-year-old range. And the baseline for this age group is the annual veterinary exam.
Right, that annual exam is really where the foundation of this proactive framework is laid. The text warns that assuming an adult dog is fine just because they visually appear energetic is, well, it's a tremendously costly mistake.
But, okay, let me push back on that for a second. If my 3-year-old beagle is running around the backyard, happy, energetic, seemingly invincible, isn't an annual exam and specifically running baseline blood work kind of overkill?
I hear that a lot.
I mean, why go looking for trouble if the dog seems perfectly fine?
This raises an important question, and it speaks directly to how biological systems actually deteriorate.
Mm.
I mean, organ function rarely just fails overnight.
Right, it's usually a slow process.
Exactly. Conditions like early orthopedic issues or subtle thyroid shifts or even early-stage liver and kidney disease, they develop incrementally. So we look at the mechanism of baseline blood work. It's not just a pass or fail test.
It's not just about whether they are sick that day.
No, blood work establishes a highly specific reference point for what normal looks like for your individual dog, rather than just comparing them to some, generic breed average.
So normal is basically a range, but you need to know where your specific dog sits within that range.
Precisely. Let's say your dog's thyroid hormone levels sit at the high end of the normal range at age 2.
Okay.
Then at age 3, the vet runs blood work and sees those levels have dropped to the very low end of the normal range. It is technically still normal on the chart, but for your specific dog.
That's a huge drop.
It represents a massive physiological shift.
Mm.
And the vet catches that downward trajectory before the dog ever gains weight or loses fur or gets lethargic.
You intervene while the body is still capable of easily rebalancing itself.
Exactly.
And catching that downward trajectory makes a lot of sense, especially, when you consider the physical constraints of modern veterinary care. I mean, a typical vet appointment is what, a 15-minute window?
Pretty much, yeah.
To assess the complete internal and external reality of an animal that literally cannot speak to you.
It is severe constraint. And that is why the source is so insistent on owners keeping lifelong medical logs.
Because we just forget things.
Oh, human memory is highly unreliable in a clinical setting, especially when you're stressed or distracted in an exam room. The text advises bringing written notes of even the issues that resolve themselves.
Right, like a dog having a slight limp on a Tuesday 3 months ago, but then waking up completely fine on Wednesday. Most of us would just assume, oh, they slept funny, and then banish it from our minds entirely.
We dismiss it because the immediate problem disappeared. But in a diagnostic context, that temporary limp is a critical data point.
How so?
Well, it might be the very first inflammatory response of early arthritis, or maybe a mild localized strain on a cruciate ligament. If the vet reads that note, they will physically manipulate that specific joint differently during those precious 15 minutes.
Wow, so keeping records over several years reveals these microscopic trends, like a quarter-pound weight gain every 12 months that a memory-based appointment will always miss.
Exactly. Which means we have to actively look for the things that hide.
Right, and if the annual exam is designed to catch the hidden systemic issues, we naturally need to look at the specific anatomical places where this breed hides local problems.
Yes, when you evaluate the physical architecture of a beagle, their anatomical vulnerabilities are incredibly pronounced, the most obvious hiding spot being their ears.
Here's where it gets really interesting from a biological perspective. A beagle's ear is essentially a biological greenhouse.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
You have this heavy, floppy flap of skin that completely covers the ear canal, and it creates this dark, warm, and, low airflow environment.
It is the perfect microclimate for pathology. I mean, that heavy ear flap traps the natural body heat and
Not
moisture.
baking in there.
Yeah, without air circulation, the normal yeast and bacteria that naturally live on a dog's skin are suddenly placed in an incubator. They multiply rapidly. Because of this structural vulnerability, ear care simply cannot be reactive.
Meaning you can't just wait until there's a problem.
Right. If you wait until the dog is intensely scratching or shaking its head, the microclimate has already failed, and a painful infection has taken hold.
So the recommendation is weekly inspections, right? And specifically, gentle cleaning after any wet or muddy outings. But using only vet-recommended products, like absolutely no improvising with household chemicals here.
The mechanism of those specific cleaning products is crucial. Using the correct veterinary solution doesn't just physically wipe away the dirt. It actively alters the pH and moisture level deep inside the ear canal.
Oh, so it changes the environment itself.
Exactly. You're chemically modifying the microclimate so that yeast and bacteria can no longer survive there, which protects the delicate structures of the inner ear from chronic inflammatory damage.
Okay, so while the ears are the most visible anatomical vulnerability, there's a secondary hidden environment that the text argues causes far more systemic damage, and that is the mouth.
Yes.
And let's be honest, brushing a dog's teeth is the one chore every pet owner wants to pretend doesn't exist. It's awkward, the dog hates it, and it just feels vaguely absurd.
It definitely feels like an unnatural chore, but dental care is vastly underestimated across all breeds, not just beagles.
Right.
The text recommends brushing several times a week using dog-specific toothpaste.
Oh.
And the mechanism behind this recommendation goes far beyond just preventing bad breath or, avoiding a tooth extraction down the road.
We are actually talking about internal organ protection here.
We are talking about the vascular system. When tartar builds up on a dog's teeth, it physically pushes the gums away from the enamel.
Ouch.
Yeah, and those gums become inflamed and begin to bleed. A bleeding gum is essentially an open doorway into the bloodstream.
Wow.
So every single time that dog chews its food, it forces thousands of oral bacteria directly through those inflamed gums and into its vascular system.
And that bacteria is pumped straight to the heart valves and the filtration systems like the kidneys and liver.
Exactly.
So routine brushing physically removes the bacteria before it can migrate into the bloodstream. You are literally brushing their teeth to prevent micro damage to their heart.
That's exactly what you're doing.
And the source notes that even with excellent home care, professional cleanings under anesthesia are still totally necessary during adulthood to clean beneath the gum line, where a toothbrush fundamentally just cannot reach.
Right, routine home care slows the progression, while professional veterinary cleanings reset the baseline. Both are required.
Okay, now that bacteria thrives out in the wild, which brings us to the reality of how this specific breed operates. Beagles are scent hounds.
Yes, they are.
They are biologically wired to plunge their faces into wet, muddy brush, tall grass, woodlands, you name it. That adventurous lifestyle exposes them to a rugged environment, requiring a highly specific set of defenses.
The adventurer's toll is steep. When a dog is constantly navigating raw terrain, parasite prevention cannot be treated as just a seasonal activity. The text stresses that protection against fleas, ticks, and heartworm must be maintained genuinely year-round.
Which is funny because people often assume ticks just, disappear the moment the temperature drops in autumn.
That assumption leaves the dog highly vulnerable. Ticks can survive in dormant states under leaf litter and become immediately active during mild winter thaws.
Or even your houses, right?
Yeah, in microclimates created near the foundation of a heated house. Furthermore, chemical prevention only handles part of the threat. The practical, mechanical habit is the physical tick check after every hike.
And specifically targeting the areas a dog cannot easily reach or scratch.
Exactly.
The source calls out checking inside those floppy ears we talked about, checking under the collar, and spreading the toes to check the webbing.
The webbing between the toes is highly vascular and very thin. If a tick attaches there, it can transmit tick-borne pathogens incredibly fast. and every step the dog takes pushes the parasite deeper into the tissue.
That is terrifying.
It is. And while spreading the toes, owners are also instructed to perform full paw inspections. I mean, a scent hound following a trail is completely focused on their nose, not where they are stepping.
So you are looking for microscopic cuts, embedded seeds, or burns from hot pavement.
Right, catching a tiny localized irritation before it evolves into an infected systemic wound.
And paw inspections naturally lead to checking the nails. The biomechanical rule is pretty straightforward. If you hear their nails clicking like tap shoes on a hardwood floor, they are too long.
The biomechanics of long nails are actually quite destructive over time. Dogs are digitigrade animals, meaning they walk on their toes, not the soles of their feet like humans do.
Okay.
So when a nail grows too long, it strikes the ground first, physically pushing the toe upward. This alters the entire angle of the foot, which places chronic, unnatural strain on the tendons in the wrist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and over months and years, that altered gait travels up the leg, contributing to chronic arthritis in the shoulder and spine. Trimming nails isn't a cosmetic preference. It is orthopedic preservation.
It's amazing how connected it all is. And to find those ticks and manage those physical tolls, you have to run your hands deeply through their short, dense coat. The text recommends weekly brushing to distribute natural skin oils, but it also mentions using that grooming time to check for skin lumps.
Yes, that's crucial.
Now wait, if I am just casually brushing my dog on a Sunday evening and my hand brushes over a new hidden lump under the skin, wouldn't that instantly send an owner into an absolute panic? Finding a lump feels like an immediate crisis.
It is entirely natural to feel a spike of fear when you discover an abnormality. However, the source provides critical medical context to neutralize that panic.
Thank goodness.
The vast majority of these dermal lumps, particularly in middle-aged adult dogs, are entirely benign. They're often just fatty tumors called lipomas or harmless sebaceous cysts.
So the goal of the weekly check isn't to look for a reason to panic.
No, the goal is early, controlled discovery. When you find a lump early during a calm, routine grooming session, you turn a simple brush into a powerful diagnostic tool.
Okay, I see.
You find a lump the size of a pea, note it in your medical log, and have the vet perform a quick, non-invasive fine needle aspirate during your next regular visit.
As opposed to finding it too late.
Right. If you don't do those weekly physical checks, you might not notice that lump until it is the size of a tennis ball. And at that point, its sheer physical mass might require invasive surgery to remove, regardless of whether it is benign or not.
You remove the crisis by controlling the timeline.
Exactly.
So the Beagle is out there, nose to the ground, running through the brush, burning all these calories. And this leads us to the most deceptive aspect of this breed's entire physiological profile, their bottomless stomachs.
Oh, yes.
And the absolute myth of the perfectly fit, active dog.
The text takes direct aim at the remarkably persistent illusion that an active outdoor dog cannot become overweight.
Because people see their dog running around the yard or, pulling on the leash during a walk, and they assume that physical output acts as a permanent shield against weight gain.
They misunderstand the metabolic reality of the transition into adulthood. When a puppy is in its developmental phase, an enormous percentage of its daily caloric intake is burned, simply fueling cellular replication and skeletal growth.
They're biological furnaces.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But once they reach their adult frame, that massive internal calorie outlet completely shuts off. The basal metabolic rate plummets.
The biological furnace just powers down, but the owner keeps feeding them the same volume of food, plus all the training treats.
And that excess caloric energy has nowhere to go except into fat storage. This is compounded by the specific behavioral biology of the beagle. They are scavengers and scent hounds.
Right.
They possess zero instinct for portion control. The source issues a fascinating clinical warning. A beagle's appetite is a completely unreliable indicator of their actual physical health.
So what does this all mean? Honestly, using a beagle's appetite to check if they are feeling sick is like using a teenager's desire for screen time to see if they finished their homework. The answer is always going to be yes.
That's a brilliant comparison.
The evolutionary drive to consume calories just overrides any physical discomfort they might be experiencing.
The hunger drive entirely masks the clinical reality. A beagle will eat enthusiastically whether they feel fantastic or whether they are actively developing early-stage hip dysplasia or even a brewing ear infection.
You simply cannot trust the food bowl to tell you how the dog is functioning internally.
No, you can't.
If the appetite is a liar, and we know the metabolism drastically slows down in adulthood, The solution has to be a monthly, hands-on physical assessment.
Visual assessments fail because fur hides the subtle accumulation of fat. You had to physically put your hands on the animal's rib cage.
You have to feel it.
You should be able to feel the individual ribs without having to press your fingers through a spongy layer of fat. And you should observe a distinct tuck at the waist when viewing them from above.
The source also emphasizes monitoring muscle tone, specifically in the hindquarters.
Assessing muscle mass is a highly nuanced diagnostic tool. A dog might maintain a seemingly perfect weight on the scale, but if you run your hands over their back legs and notice a gradual thinning or softening of the muscle tissue,
That's a red flag.
it signals a structural shift. That muscle wasting, known as atrophy, might indicate that the dog is subconsciously shifting their weight forward onto their front legs.
Oh, to compensate for early invisible joint pain in their hips.
Exactly. It is an early warning system for orthopedic decline.
Because the appetite is so useless as a barometer for this breed, this entire collective suite of observations, the hands-on weight checks, the ear inspections, the dental brushing, the coat monitoring, all of that, must become the new operational baseline for measuring their well-being.
Yes.
You are replacing the single, deeply flawed metric of is he eating with a comprehensive mechanical system of observation.
A system that relies on physical touch and objective data, rather than behavioral assumption.
But let's look at the practical reality of this for a second. Replacing a simple glance at the food bowl with a whole suite of physical exams sounds incredibly exhausting.
It can seem overwhelming.
Checking the greenhouse ears, brushing the teeth to protect the heart valves, logging phantom limps, spreading toes to look for ticks, feeling the ribs for fat layers, assessing hindquarter muscle density. How does a busy person actually pull this off without pet care becoming a part-time job?
Well, if the routine requires immense willpower or massive blocks of free time, it will inevitably fail.
Right.
The source reveals that the secret to this framework isn't intensity. The secret is consistency, and consistency requires almost zero friction.
So you aren't setting up a sterile exam table in your living room and putting on a lab coat every Sunday?
Definitely not. The text strongly advises against relying on calendar reminders or trying to force new standalone health routines into your schedule. The psychological mechanism they advocate for is habit stacking.
Ah, habit stacking.
You attach these tiny preventive actions to the neural pathways of routines you already perform automatically.
You don't have to be a hyper-vigilant helicopter pet parent. You just piggyback on your existing life. Like you're already toweling off the dog's muddy paws at the back door after a walk in the rain.
Right. The habit is already firing.
So you just take an extra 5 seconds to flip the ear flaps up, check the microclimate, and look between the toes?
Exactly. Or you are in the bathroom brushing your own teeth before bed, so you spend 60 seconds brushing the dog's teeth.
That makes total sense.
You pick a rigid monthly anchor, like the day you pay your mortgage or your rent, and you use that automatic trigger to run your hands over their ribs and hindquarters.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this lack of friction is what makes the routine sustainable over 5, 8, or 10 years. I mean, anyone can be intensely focused on pet health for a single week after a scary vet visit. But daily consistency is what actually alters the biological timeline.
It directly combats the misconception that preventive care is something you only worry about when a dog becomes a senior.
Because aging isn't a cliff.
No, the biological mechanism of aging isn't the sudden cliff that a dog falls off at age 10. It is a slow, incremental slope of cellular and structural wear and tear.
And these adult habits flatten that slope.
Exactly. The weight management lowering joint stress, the dental care stopping vascular inflammation, the early detection of lumps. You are literally preparing the dog's internal organs and skeletal structure to endure a comfortable, mobile senior phase.
It's compounding interest. You're building the physiological savings account in their adult years so they have something to draw from when they age. And honestly, for you, listening to this right now, whether you own a Beagle, a completely different breed, or no pets at all, this deep dive serves as a masterclass in how systems operate.
It really does.
It is a profound look at how proactive, tiny, stacked habits compound over time to prevent massive, complex failures. That underlying principle is just as highly applicable to your own human health, your personal finances, or your mental well-being as it is to a dog's ears.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the mundane maintenance that makes the grand adventures possible.
It is the architecture of a resilient life, regardless of the species.
As we wrap up, there was a charming historical detail from the source text that provides a fascinating shift in perspective. They noted that today's beagle is most likely out in a manicured neighborhood park tracking the scent of a dropped sandwich, rather than out on the rugged moors tracking a rabbit like their ancestors did for centuries.
Yeah, their environment has radically softened.
A profound shift in their daily reality and physical output, which leads to a really provocative final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. As our pets' lifestyles become increasingly modern, more indoor, more leisurely, infinitely safer, but far less physically demanding, are we actually fighting against their ancient evolutionary biology?
It's a great question.
Is all this preventive care we've explored today really just us artificially simulating the daily physical maintenance and rigorous calorie burn they used to naturally achieve just by surviving in the wild? Are we simply playing the role of nature? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.